What's up, guys? JD here, and on today's show, we are talking about Marketing Superpowers, my book that comes out today, June 18th, 2024. I hope you have your copy of Marketing Superpowers. Build a brand so good that getting customers feels like magic. If you have your copy, awesome. Your Audible, your Kindle, your paperback, whatever you like reading it on. And of course, if you don't have it yet, head over to marketingsuperpowersbook.com. You're gonna wanna get your copy. And I'm gonna be talking today, taking you inside of the book and some of the key concepts and really how I want to help you and watch you take your brands from 0 to 1 million to 10 million to 100 million and how you build brands with that kind of power. We're going to talk about 3 big things today. The first one is the axis of influence, which is really the thesis of the book. The axis of influence is my explanation of how things become influential in society, how brands go from complete irrelevance to complete domination in their category. The second big thing we're going to talk about is the power of a brand. Like, what is a brand itself? People have these crazy notions like a brand is your logo or a brand is your font or your color or your signage. That has nothing to do with your brand, nothing at all. So get that out of your head. We're going to talk about what a brand really is and why a brand is worth millions and millions and millions of dollars if you build it right. And the final thing we're going to talk about is the power of storytelling and the power of characters in storytelling and why that is fundamental to everything you do in business. All right, that's what we're covering today. Let's get to it. So the first big concept I cover in the book is called the axis of influence. Chapter 2 is actually titled Welcome to the Axis of Influence. And if you can think back to 5th grade or 8th grade math class, you know what an axis is. You have an x-axis and a y-axis, vertical and horizontal. And in the axis of influence, the y-axis, the up-down one, is reach. Right? The higher you are, the more reach you have. So somebody who's like super famous or a brand that has global recognition would be at the top of the y-axis because they have tons of reach. And somebody who is anonymous, just starting out, no one's ever heard of this brand, they're at the bottom of the y-axis. They have no reach. So that's one half of the axis. And then the x-axis, the one that goes horizontal, is how known, liked, and trusted you are, right? So how known are you? How much do people trust you and how much do they like you? So that's really all you have to understand for now about the axis of influence. And those pieces together, your reach combined with your KLT, known, liked, and trusted, make up your influence. So from there, I want to tell you a story that comes up in chapter 2 of the book. And this story really will help you understand what reach is, and then I'll get to KLT in a second. So I'm going to start with a character named Jake. So this guy Jake is sitting in a room all by himself. He has 0 reach, right? Because Jake can speak, but no one will hear him if he talks. He's in a room all by himself. Even if Jake yells, he remains silent as far as anyone else is concerned. He's isolated and he's totally alone. Now let's say Jake wanders out of this little room and finds himself a group of 10 people wandering around in the lobby, and he asks for their attention, and then he starts to speak. These 10 people are all within earshot of Jake, so when Jake speaks, they can hear him. Now, Jake is not saying anything different. Let's just say he's saying the same stuff that he was saying in the room all by himself. It's the same stuff as before. His words hold the same meaning, but they have a little more value now because 10 people are around to listen. They may or may not be interested in what Jake is saying, but at least he has the opportunity to catch their attention. So now let's say Jake keeps on walking, he leaves these 10 people, and he walks into an auditorium, and he steps on stage and he grabs the microphone, and out in the audience, there's a crowd of 100 people. He starts to speak. Again, he's saying the same thing as before, but now his words are carrying even more value because there are 100 people out there listening to him. Just like in the lobby, right? There were 10 people in the lobby, but now there are 100 people. And they may or may not be interested in what he's saying, but at least he has the opportunity to grab their attention. So we've gone from 0 to 10 to 100. Now let's say a light flickers on in the audience. It's a camera, and it's pointed straight at Jake. And now he's being live streamed on YouTube, and there are 10,000 people tuning in right now. His mouth opens up, and the same exact words come out. He's repeating what he said in his little room by himself, in the lobby to 10 people, and on stage to 100 people just a moment earlier. His reach is growing because more people are hearing him when he speaks. But again, he's saying the exact same thing. All these people, they don't necessarily know who Jake is. He's able to reach them because of the mechanisms at his disposal, the lobby, the stage, the live stream. Reach grows simply because you can connect with more people at one time. But do any of these people care what Jake is saying? Are they seeking him out? Will they remember him tomorrow? Not necessarily, because again, reach is just half the axis. That's just the y-axis. And think about it for a second. Jake could just be the guy calling out the numbers and the letters at a bingo tournament. If you go to a bingo tournament, there's somebody on a megaphone, and maybe there's like 10 people there or 100 people there. I've actually only been to one bingo tournament in my life. I was on a cruise about a decade ago, so I don't exactly know, but there's a lot of people sitting around, and there's somebody calling out the letters, and that person reaches a lot of people, but you don't know who they are. You don't have any trust for them necessarily, other than you assume that they're calling out the right letters and numbers. You don't have any like or dislike towards them. You're probably indifferent towards them. So just because they can reach you doesn't mean they have influence. And that's what I want you to understand. Reach by itself is meaningless. You have to have also the x-axis. And the x-axis is being known, liked, and trusted. For someone to be influential, they must be known, liked, and trusted. Being known is when you have some recognition in other people's minds. They know your name, or your face, or your logo, or your symbol, or something that represents who you are. That's the starting point. Being liked is when those same people who know you have an affinity towards you, right? So they maybe relate to you, or they derive value from you, or they associate good things when they think about you, and they feel good when you enter their mind. And finally, being trusted is when those same people who know you and like you truly value what you say. They seek out your recommendations, your feedback, your advice, your commentary, your validation, your strategies, your insights. They put weight in your words. They might even buy a product because you put your name on it. So that was an excerpt from the book, and I hope that gives you a sense of why understanding the inputs of influence is so important, because there are some people that are just out there chasing reach, or chasing the megaphone, or chasing fame, or chasing likes, or chasing engagement on social media, right? And like all those things individually do nothing. You need to combine them, and you need to understand how to combine them. And that's really what the book is all about. And then, of course, turning that into money, because without money, you don't have a business. Now, the second big thing I want to talk about is the power of the brand. And the definition I give of brand in the book comes at the front of the book, and I say a brand represents every dollar your customer is willing to pay above and beyond what your product is worth. That is the definition of brand. Now, you might be thinking to yourself, well, yeah, but my logo and my fonts and my colors and my sign and my website and my pamphlets and all these things, those things have nothing to do with your brand itself, right? Those are elements that you can use if and when they become relevant to building that story. But there are a lot of brands in this world that you probably have some affinity to, that you're drawn to. But if I said, what color is their logo, maybe you couldn't tell me. Maybe you've never even seen their website or checked them out on social, right? And I'll give you an example of that. Maybe there's a really good restaurant in your city that everybody has been talking about. You've been hearing about it from your friends, from your family, from your colleagues at work. You read about it on the website. You saw it on Facebook. You saw it on Instagram. You're seeing influencers talk about it. There's just this restaurant, and maybe like you know what food they serve, and you know maybe the area they're located in, but that's all you've ever seen, and you just heard about it. That is a brand. That in itself is a brand. And why is it a brand? Because you're hearing about it from influential sources that you trust. There's enough of a volume of it that it's impactful to you, that it's memorable to you. And then what do? You go and you try to make a reservation at that restaurant. You probably can't get one. You've got to wait 6 weeks, 9 weeks, 12 weeks before you can get in and get a table that's big enough to fit you and your party, and also at a time that you want to get in, on a day you want to get in. So that could be a brand just as much as anybody else building a brand, focusing on their colors and their fonts and their style and all that kind of stuff. But I want you to start from the thinking point point that the only purpose of your brand is to draw people towards you and ultimately have them pay more money for the thing you sell, because you've got to be able to have elasticity in your pricing. If you're going to have a phenomenal business, a business superpower, a marketing superpower, your brand has to by itself have equity such that you can charge more money for the product and you're not selling a commodity. So those are the things that go into a brand itself. The most obvious place we see this is at the super high end of the market. Think about LVMH. Think about Chanel. Think about Gucci. Think about luxury brands. They sell products that you could buy for a few dollars, for $6, for $12. You could buy a handbag. You could buy a piece of luggage. You could buy all these things that they sell, but when you put Chanel on the bag, it's $7,000. It's $13,000. If I were to sell you a bag for $9, that was a very nice looking bag, you wouldn't compare that to Chanel. Why? Is it because the bag itself is very different? Yeah, maybe. Maybe the bag is different. But to the layman, the bag serves the same purpose, right? I'm putting stuff in my bag, I'm going to take it. But you're not buying the Chanel bag for the utility, you're buying it for the brand. And this is obvious again at the super high end of the market. Now, what if you're not selling a luxury good? You're selling something like home services, or you're selling coffee, or you're selling pencils and pens and stationery supplies, or you're a plumber or an electrician. The same principles are there. The same principles. Maybe you're not going to sell your product for $10,000, but maybe the competitor who sells it for $50 an hour and you're charging $80 an hour, and you can justify the $80 an hour because of your brand and all that comes with it. So just because we see it at the high end of the market, it actually exists everywhere, right? The cereal you buy, the soda that you drink, right? When you reach for Coca-Cola because you like drinking Coca-Cola and you see another imitation cola drink and it's 35 cents per can cheaper, are you going to buy it? Probably not. You're going to buy Coca-Cola because that brand means something to so many people. So what does an amazing brand look like? An amazing brand looks like having price elasticity, having price flexibility such that you can raise your prices. What else does it look like? It looks like a lineup outside the door. When a new sneaker drops from a brand that maybe you've never heard of, but again, the sneaker brand means something to a cult group of people, that is what brand looks like, lineups outside the door. Brand is reservations at a restaurant that you can't get. Brand is tickets to a concert that are unavailable. It is sold out. You're on a waiting list, right? The Eras Tour, Taylor Swift, that's a brand. That's a brand in its extreme sense. And there are so many examples of this. I use the most high-profile examples because I'm speaking to a lot of people. I want to make sure you all get it. But think about the software you use. Think about the drinks, the restaurants you go to, the clothes you wear, the shows you watch, the sports teams you enjoy. All these things are brands, and they mean something to individuals because of the brand, because of what that represents. I'll give you a really great example from a recent news event. So if you guys have been following the GameStop saga, which just popped up a few weeks back. So this character, Roaring Kitty, not a character, a real person, Roaring Kitty, whose real name is Keith Gill, he was the guy that sort of started the GameStop craze way back during COVID days. And he popped up on Twitter, X, just a few weeks ago with a little meme of this guy who was sitting and then he leaned forward like he noticed something. This is just a graphic he posted on Twitter. And all of a sudden, what started to happen? People did some digging, the Reddit boards lit up, and they realized, oh, this guy's back in action. We're going to buy GameStop again. And over the course of a few days, the stock went up 40%. And this guy who's obviously holding shares in GameStop, I think his paper net worth went up by tens or hundreds of millions of dollars because of this. Now, you might hear that story and say, well, why is Jon telling me about some meme stop craze? I want you to just extract one lesson from that story. Brand. Did Roaring Kitty have to run a whole bunch of Facebook ads and run Google ads and take out commercial time and run billboards to get you to notice that he was buying the stock? No, he is a brand. He represents something to people and to this group of people who are interested in the thing that he does, the thing that he talks about, which is stocks and particularly this GameStop stock, he means something. And so over the course of just a couple hours, he was able to rally his customers, his following, to do something with the most subtle sign ever. That's a brand. Whether you like the cause or what they're doing, it's irrelevant. That is the power of a brand. Wouldn't it be amazing if your brand could do that? If you were able to do that in whatever area of business you're in? That's the power of a true brand. The last big thing I want to talk about is the power of the central character. Now, y'all know that I've been working with influencers for over a decade, social media influencers. I've worked with over 20,000 of them over at Influicity, my agency. And influencers are a major influence to me in how marketing is done. Now, the book itself is not about becoming an influencer or the fact that you need to be a content creator, but what it is about is the fact that characters are central to stories, and stories are central to brands. Storytelling is central to brands. So if you think about all the greatest brands, all the most timeless, most historic brands that are out there in the world, they all have characters at the center because people are drawn to people. So the oldest examples of brands that I love to use are the major religions, because they've been around for hundreds or thousands of years. So think about the major religions. You have Christianity. Who's the central character? Jesus Christ. You have Islam, Prophet Muhammad. You have Buddhism, Buddha, right? You got Judaism, Moses. There's always characters at the center of these major brands so that we can latch onto something and understand it in a way that is human, or that is at least humanizing, because of course we're talking about deities here, but you understand what I'm saying. You have to be able to latch on to some character such that you can relate in some way, or at least aspire to something in some way. The greatest house of brands in terms of modern businesses, what's the greatest house of brands? I would argue it's Disney. Disney is the greatest house of brands that there is. What is Disney? It's characters. Disney's Aladdin, Disney is Simba, Disney is Elsa, Disney is Ariel, Disney is Moana. Disney is the characters that make up the storylines that people are in love with. And Disney's probably one of the best examples because people are drawn to these brands in droves and they build entire universes off these brands. That's Disneyland. That's Disney World. That's the Disney merchandising business. That's the Disney entertainment business. That's Disney Plus. So brands and characters are very hard to separate because major brands come together with character. So those are the kind of big themes I want to get across. And in the book, I talk about the movement formula, which is the central formula to creating any movement and sparking a brand so that people can fall in love with you. I talk about the axis of influence. I give examples of all this stuff. And most importantly, I go into practical detail, step by step, of how to do it. This is not just a thinking book. There's a bit of thinking at the beginning to get you into the right mindset, but it's really a practical how-to, step-by-step guide of how to get things done. I'll leave you with something that has been so powerful and so gratifying to me. I've had a lot of people read the book over the last few weeks, specifically podcasters. So if you go out and listen to all the big marketing podcasts on Apple or Spotify, I've been very fortunate to be on a lot of them over the last few weeks, and I'm sure the episodes will be coming out for the next few months. And thank you so much to all the hosts and the producers who have been so generous having me on their shows and giving me the airtime. I've given advanced copies of the books to almost everybody who's interviewed me, and the feedback that I've gotten has been so interesting. People have said, Jon, this is going to really help small business owners. And then other people will say, Jon, this is really going to help Fortune 500 CMOs who have to manage a $500 million or $1 billion ad budget. Or, Jon, this is really going to help small business owners who need to understand growth. Even if this isn't the first thing they do, they need to understand how it works. Or, Jon, this is really going to help CEOs at mid-sized companies so they understand how to get from 50 to 100 to $500 million in revenue. So what's been so gratifying is just the breadth of people that I think will get value from the book, because the principles in it are so universal. And look, let's be honest. If you're running a business that's doing $100 million or even like $50 million in revenue, you're probably not going to implement any of this stuff yourself. That's why Influicity exists. That's why my agency does this work, because when brands get to a certain size, they outsource it to the experts so we can scale it for them. So I'm not under the impression that big companies are going to be necessarily hiring people to do this kind of stuff. They're going to be hiring agencies like mine to do this stuff. But if you're a small business owner, a solopreneur, someone who's just getting started, or someone who hasn't started yet, the principles in Marketing Superpowers Please read it. Please implement them, because I can tell you, working with 20,000 influencers, building brands for the last decade plus, wow, there is nothing like having marketing superpowers and building a brand so good that getting customers feels like magic. You know it when you have it. I've seen it. It really is magic. Thank you guys so much for picking up the book. You can get it again at marketingsuperpowersbook.com. And of course, leave a review on Amazon. That is how we spread the word. So if you're reading the book, even if you just read the first 5 chapters, head over to Amazon, leave a review. That is how we spread the word. Thank you guys. I will see you in the pages of Marketing Superpowers, and I will talk to you guys next time.